Hello, beautiful people. All right, today we're going to work on my 2016 Mitsubishi Outlander SE. So I've got the 4-cylinder MyVec engine in this. We are going to change the transmission fluid. There's not a whole lot of videos out there on Mitsubishis, it seems like. I also have an Eclipse, a 2012 Spider convertible Eclipse. Absolutely love. But we are going to change the transmission fluid on this. I think it says about every 30 to 45,000 miles. I've driven this thing pretty hard the last probably year or so. A lot of miles. We went up the coast of California and that was almost 2,000 miles. So I'm going to show you how to do that in this car. Super easy. What I love about Mitsubishi is they've made, look at all this space you have within the engine. Super simple. I've seen other cars where it looks like a big bowl of spaghetti in here. To do the transmission service on a lot of cars, you have to drop the pan. Mitsubishi on this actually put a drain plug in there, so I'll show you that in a second. The tools you're going to need, of course, is a drain container. Always make sure and take this off. Do it right now. I have forgotten to do that before, and it started to almost overflow a couple of times. And then also to make sure and take this off. This allows the air in. As this fills up, it pushes the air out. Without this, it won't fill up, and then you'll start to see it completely fill up around here. You're also going to need a 19 millimeter socket, and then of course your wrench and a little bit of an extension to help. You'll also need a small funnel, because right here is where you're going to fill things up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get underneath, and we'll meet back in just a second. Okay, so we're up underneath the car. A couple of things I want to point out is underneath the car here, this right here is your oil pan with your drain plug on the oil pan. It's so easy to change the oil in this car. Right here from the oil pan, if you slide your hand over, they left a hole here. This is your oil filter, so you can change all this yourself. Super easy. Remember one thing, whenever you're changing the oil, you want to put a little bit of oil on the gasket that's on the little rubber O-ring that's on that. That way it just doesn't melt to the engine, and then it's just kind of hand tightened. You don't want to over tighten any of these bolts or anything. Just to the left of the oil pan, you'll see the transmission. Most of the time, you would have to undo every single one of these bolts and drop the whole thing. What I love that Mitsubishi did on this car is they actually put a drain plug, so you can drain and fill this. So we're going to go ahead and put the 19 millimeter wrench on this. Now remember, a rule of thumb always is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So when you're on most bolts, 99% of the time, you're going to want to go ahead and do a righty-tighty. So if you take it to the right, it's going to tighten it. If you go to the left, it's going to loosen it. So let's go ahead and loosen this. And like I said, you don't need to tighten these very tight. That one was a little bit too loose, but so we're going to go ahead and then make sure to put your fill container underneath, and you're going to slowly just go ahead and screw this out. I always like to hold on to it so that way it doesn't drop into the container. And there you go. See, and this should be pretty clear. It's definitely time to change this. I think it's been about 25,000 miles, but like I said, I drove this car pretty like a lot, probably 20,000 miles in the last year. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and let this drain. One thing always to remember too, I was always told to take your car out, drive it for a little bit. That way the oil is warm. Come back, let it sit for about 20-30 minutes. Oil is still warm. It just makes it easier for it to drain. Okay, and then one last thing I didn't tell you is at the very top on the dipstick for the transmission, you want to kind of pull that out a little bit, because as this leaks, it's going to create a little bit of a suction. So that way, if you've taken the at the very top, if you've taken the dipstick, you've pulled it out a little bit, it's going to allow air to go in there and it's going to drain a little bit easier for you. Okay, so we'll check back in just a little bit. Okay, so we're back now underneath the car. I've let it sit and drain for about 15-20 minutes because you want to get as much of the old fluid out as you can. So I always like to let it sit, and now it's just a slow trickle. So we've got the drain plug right here. Always clean the drain plug after every time you change the oil or the transmission fluid. And then you always want to clean the surrounding area too. So I like to just kind of take, you know, some paper napkin and just wipe all this down just to clean all of that. And then, of course, you grab your drain plug, you put it back in there, like so. Tighten her up. At this point, wipe it all down again, because remember, a clean car is a happy car. Slide this out of the way now. And then put this on, remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we'll take our and tighten that up. You don't want to tighten this too tight, but you know, just good and snug. So once it's on there tight, just maybe not even a quarter turn, just a little bit of a snug. All right, because you can always come back and check to see if it's leaking any kind of oil. Every once in a while, when I change this, I did it last time, so I'm not going to do it this time. See all of these screws that are holding the pan on there? I like to just grab the another wrench and go there and just see if any of them are loose. Kind of tighten them up. That way, over time, you know, as your car gets older and stuff, this has got 100,000 miles on it. These sometimes tend to loosen up a little bit and they start to leak. So while I'm under here, I might as well sometimes just sit there and just give them a quick tight, and then do the same thing on the oil pan when I change the oil, about every 3 or 4 times, the 4th time that I do it. All right, so now let's go up top and we're gonna put the oil in. There we go. So right down here is where you put your dipstick. This is where you're gonna fill your transmission fluid. Normally I have a long spout that goes up here and then the funnel, but for some reason I can't find it. So I learned a trick a long time ago. I have a small one, so I'm gonna put this small one in like this. And whenever you get a funnel, always make sure and clean the inside, because there could be, you know, residue from the last time that you changed something, whether it was oil. A lot of times dust likes to collect in this. So clean all this out. So I wedged that one in there, which as you can see is now in there. And then I have a bigger one that I'll just put on top of that. So that way, as you can see, it'll go in there and it'll fill. You just got to go slow. Okay. So for this car, it uses 4.5 quarts. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put in 4.5 quarts of transmission fluid. Okay, so we're all done. We went ahead and put the dipstick back in, and everything looks good. The only question that I really had, I was a little bit nervous because I used a new type of oil. It's Castrol Transmax ATF CVT Universal. So it covers both the traditional and continuous variable transmission. I didn't realize that when I bought it. I thought it was just universal, and then when I started pouring it in, it was red. Now, every time I've changed my transmission fluid, it's always been kind of clearish. But I did look on here, and it says that it does cover continuous variable transmission. I went online, and this actually got really good ratings, like the best. And so they said that they were able to finally formulate where it'll work in both. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Like I said, I have 107,000 miles on this, and I've never had one issue with it. I hope Karma's not listening or anything. But anyway, so I went ahead and put it in, and because it is a little bit red in color, I've never seen it like that. So I panicked at first, but then I did all the reviews and looked online, and it's considered one of the best CVT fluids on the market, and it's pretty relatively cheap. So anyway, if anything happens to my car, I will post it. But now you know the basic setup on how to change the transmission fluid in a Mitsubishi Outlander. Super simple and easy. All right. Hope this helps. Take care. Bye-bye.